Welcome to Sunday worship at the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Burlington, Vermont. Today is Sunday, the 4th of July. Happy 4th. As Unitarian Universalists, we come from many traditions and spiritual backgrounds. We share a commitment to build a world community based on justice, compassion, love, and respect for the environment. We encourage each other in the search for meaning in our lives. Here in Burlington, we acknowledge that the land our buildings are located on is the unceded territory of the Western Abenaki peoples. It has been their place of meeting and exchange for hundreds of years. We are the current stewards of this land. To learn more about our society and the events that take place here, either on location or virtually, please go to our website. Feel free to contact us. I am Melinda Lee, a member of our Worship Associate team, and I'm thankful for all who created this online service. Our Developmental Minister, Reverend Patricia Hart, our musicians, Sam Whitesell and James Stewart, our choir, our Director of Lifespan Faith Development, Erika, Reif, Peggy Derby, our flower person, and many others. Today is our last pre-recorded worship service, and we will return to online services this August. Please note that today there is no online coffee hour after Sunday service. At 12:30 p.m. on location here at the Meeting House, there is a rededication of our community to Black Lives Matter. The ceremony will be led by Reverend Patricia Hart, and the speakers include Mark Hughes. He is the Executive Director of Vermont Racial Justice Alliance and Justice for All. At 1 p.m., the monthly silent vigil for racial justice will then be held. We are now about to begin, so find a candle or a chalice if you wish. Whether you are from far away or from very near, come, welcome. It is good to worship together.
We kindle this chalice flame to remind ourselves of the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. Heather McGee is an American economist, lawyer, policy advisor, and smart person. She is a Black woman, currently the chair of the board of Color of Change, the nation's largest online racial justice organization, and she also serves on the boards of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund and the Open Society's Foundation's U.S. programs. And she is the author of a very important book published this year, 2021. The title is The Sum of Us: What Racism Costs Everyone and how we can prosper together. It says on her website, Heather designs and promotes solutions to inequality in America. That's a good thing to have on your website. She wrote this: when a nation founded on the belief in racial hierarchy truly rejects that belief, then and only then will we have discovered a new world. That is our destiny. To make it manifest, we must challenge ourselves to live our lives in solidarity across color, origin, and class. We must demand changes to the rules. We must emerge from this crisis in our republic with a new birth of freedom, rooted in the knowledge that we are so much more when the we in we the people is not some of us, but all of us. We are greater than and greater for the sum of us.
Good morning. I'm Erika, Reif, the Director of Lifespan Faith Development here at FUUSB. Today, for our reflection for all ages, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Black Lives Matter banner that hangs in front of our meeting house. I'm sure you've seen it. It looks like this. We first put this banner up several years ago because we wanted to show support for the people all over the country who were protesting systemic racism and specifically the killing of Black people by the police. We wanted to make sure that everyone here in Burlington, Vermont, knew that this congregation is on the side of love. We didn't want to be silent. But some of us were worried that if we hung the banner, we would draw the attention of those people whose hearts are clouded by hate. We were afraid that they would just tear it down again. But we decided that we couldn't control what some people might do. And instead, we should just be ready, prepared to replace the banner if that happened. And it did happen. Somebody tore the banner down and we replaced it. And then later the wind tore it down and again, we replaced it. And then last year came and the whole country, the whole world really was reacting to the murder of George Floyd by the police. People were having protests and vigils and talking about how to create a fair and free world. And just then we discovered that somebody had sliced the banner nearly in half, but that somebody else had mended it. They fixed it before we even knew it was broken. And they did such a nice job that it was hard to tell it had been damaged at all unless you got up close. At first, we didn't know who had done this kind thing, and then we got an email, and it said, "Howdy, neighbors. I've lived on Clark Street now for a few years and have appreciated your display of the Black Lives Matter banner since it was first installed. I was quite disheartened upon noticing that someone took a knife to it. Some friends and I decided we'd do a little repair of the flag. We hoped it would condemn the damage done while communicating that we will not give up until the battle is won. Our mend definitely won't hold up for long. We used staples at the bottom and some packing tape to bridge the slash. But I am hopeful it will last until the flag can be truly repaired or replaced." And then they thanked us for displaying it in the first place. An artist here at FUUSB, Sarah Rosedahl, painted this picture. You see these hearts are standing in for the tape and the staples. We can see where hate, ignorance, and fear ripped it, and we can also see where love has repaired it. We replaced that banner last summer with a ceremony on the lawn, and then last week, some people came and cut it down again. Today, we will gather on the lawn and replace it again. We get to choose whether we'll be discouraged by those in our community who would tear things apart or lift it up by those of our neighbors who are determined to keep fixing what is broken. Every day, it's up to us to decide that we will keep mending the world with our love.
I would invite you all now into a few moments of stillness, of gratitude and reflection. And today, some remembering. It's been a week. The days have been warm and beautiful with summer and even rain. The tension of the last 15 months has continued to loosen its grip just a bit for some, at least in some hours, amid everything that is still worrying. It has been a week, too, of losses. 2 first UU people gone. Barry Nelson, who was a former member, died tragically in a boating accident. We hold all of his family and friends in love and in prayer. And this past Monday, Roddy left us. Even though we knew it was coming, it's still hard to believe. Roddy O'Neill Cleary was Minister Emerita of this congregation, which she served with grace and joy and playfulness and so much love from 1997 to 2008. Earlier, to begin the service, Melinda rang the bowl that Roddy used at the beginning of every service. You may have recognized it. Roddy was buried at the Cleary family farm this past week, and there will be a memorial service right here and also live streamed on September 25th. But we wanted to remember her today. We're going to share just a bit of a video interview that she made with Richard Kemp, also of this congregation, in 2014.
But getting to the point of that amazing song that Mahalia Jackson composed, and he sang, and it was "Soon I Will Be Done." Wow! I mean, and that's a way of kind of breaking into, my own background. Always that dimension of we don't have much time on this earth, and that was actually from my own family tradition. That was okay, Mm-hmm. I mean, soon I will. But it's a beautiful thought. It's not just a beautiful thought, but it's to share in that faith, mm-hmm. that true. It's temporary, Yeah. It's temporary what we've got here, and so on the one hand that it can it can be escapism. I've known it in that sense too. Mm-hmm. It's like I've had it with this life, and then it can also be a real kind of initiator, an instigator. Like I got to make the most of it. I've got today. Isn't that wonderful? It's a gift. It's a gift.
One day at a time.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. One day at a time.
every week, in the midst of our worship together, we pause and we ask each other indirectly to be generous, to remember that the existence of this congregation and its work in the world is completely dependent on the generosity of the members and the friends who want the First Youth Society of Burlington to exist. Almost every week of the year, we also give half of what we bring in a Sunday offering away to an organization in the community that is doing the work that our mission, our values tell us is important. For this one Sunday, not for any particular reason other than it just happens to fall here, we are just giving money to this congregation. Just this 1 week, we are remembering that this place exists and is thriving and is growing and is doing well because you all believe in it. So your generous gifts matter, even today. This morning's offering will now be most gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts in the service of our mission, to inspire spiritual growth, to care for one another and our community, to seek truth, and to act for justice.
Do I look there or look there? Okay. Okay. My name is Alexa Ann Watson, and I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of Frederick
Douglass is my great-great-great-great.
I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of Frederick Douglass.
I am the great-great-great-great-grandchild.
I've been counting on my fingers since I was like 5.
Whenever you're ready, here we go.
This is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom.
Fellow citizens, I shall not presume to dwell at length on the associations that cluster about this day. The simple story of it is that 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects.
Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers were wise men, and if they did not go mad, they became restive under this treatment.
With brave men, there's always a remedy for oppression.
They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary.
Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence?
Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us?
I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary.
Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common.
The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me.
The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me.
This 4th of July is yours, not mine.
You may rejoice, I must mourn.
Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions.
At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed.
Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke.
For it is not light that is needed, but fire.
It is not the gentle shower, but thunder.
We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake.
The feeling of the nation must be quickened.
The conscience of the nation must be roused.
The propriety of the nation must be startled.
The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed.
And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim.
To him, your celebration is a sham.
Your boasted liberty an unholy license.
Your national greatness, swelling vanity.
Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless.
Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence.
Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery.
Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings,
with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him
mere bombast,
fraud,
deception,
impiety,
and hypocrisy. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Allow me to say in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country.
This speech was written almost 170 years ago, but this part of it is still extremely relevant, especially with today's protests.
I think that when people are oppressed, they feel silenced, and if someone feels silenced, they get angry. There are certain tactics that you need to use to get people to really hear your voice, and it's not always going to be just like a very calm discussion.
I think he's mostly talking to the people who are already on his side, but believe that they can still try to talk this out, or that things are still justifiable. I know a lot of people at the time were saying, and people now are still saying, that it's not as bad as it could be.
While the 4th of July probably does not feel the same to me as it does to others, I wouldn't say that it has no meaning, because it is the time when America as a country became free from another country. But I would say that it's not the time in which I gained my freedom.
He had a lot of hope, especially for his age. And I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm only 20 years old, but I'm exhausted. I have these thoughts like, will we ever really get to this point? Or is this really something that we should actually spend our time fighting for?
Somebody once said that pessimism is a tool of white oppression, and I think that's true. I think in many ways we are still slaves to the notion that it will never get better. But I think that there is hope, and I think it's important that we celebrate Black joy and Black life, and we remember that change is possible, change is probable, and that there's hope.
It was 1852 when Frederick Douglass gave the speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." You have just heard excerpts from that speech read by some of Frederick Douglass's descendants. I find it amazing and humbling that we are all citizens of the same nation. So in 1852, almost a decade before the Civil War began, slavery was still the law. Not everywhere, but in 15 of the 34 states in the Union. And the fugitive slave law had just been passed a year or so before. This law required all citizens to recover, to find, to report, to turn over people who were escaping enslavement. And it also denied the right to a jury trial to any fugitive. This was a dilemma, a moral catastrophe for many, especially our Unitarian and Universalist ancestors in the free states especially. But it made every part of this entire country unsafe for Black people in a way that it had not been true before. That was what was on Frederick Douglass's mind on that July 4th when he delivered this speech. He spends a good part of it talking about the Declaration of Independence, which lifts up the divinely given truth that all men are created equal. Douglass talked about the founders of the Republic, the men who wrote and agreed to and published that declaration in 1776. In a part of the speech that we did not hear, he speaks highly of them. He says, "They were peace men, but they preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. They were quiet men, but they did not shrink from agitating against oppression. They showed forbearance, but they knew its limits. They believed in order, but not in the order of tyranny. With them, nothing was settled that was not right. With them, justice, liberty, and humanity were final, not slavery and oppression. You may well cherish the memory of such men. They were great in their day and generation." Good men, he tells us, and we've been taught, with a bold, creative vision of equality for all. They failed to believe in it enough to make it true. When learning history, it is important to consider your sources. In preparing to talk to you today about the Declaration of Independence, about Black Lives Matter, about this complicated, tragic, amazing, infuriating country of ours, I spent time with a book. This book, called These Truths, it is a massive, heavy, 800-plus page history of the United States. It was published a year ago by Jill Lepore, who is a professor of American history at Harvard and also a writer for The New Yorker. She is an extraordinary scholar and speaker, and she's actually really not just fascinating, but fun to listen to. So I want to encourage you to look her up on YouTube. These Truths, this book, is the product of her decades-long research into the story of our country, a story she knows better than many. There is so much to learn, so much that my excellent education left out or misrepresented, I find. So much I didn't know about the American Revolution. How much, for example, how much the drafters of the 1776 Declaration and the leaders of the revolutionary forces and the framers of the Constitution, how much they were aware of, shall we say, the inconsistency of their assertion that all people are endowed with the same rights, that freedom is for everyone, the inconsistency between those declarations and their failure to effectively deal with the industry of slavery that was already deeply embedded in the economy and the society of the country that they were creating. It's not just that they failed to deal with it effectively, they failed to deal with it at all. The drafting of the Constitution was meant, Jill Lepore says, quote, to mark the start of a new era in which the course of history might be made predictable and a government established that would be ruled not by accident and force, but by reason and choice, close quote. Lepore describes the ordinariness of life in 1787 as the Constitution was completed and sent around and gradually ratified by the states. She notices people going about their lives arguing about whether the Constitution would work. And amid all this normal life, she cites an advertisement of that time that appeared in a New York newspaper. She quotes it. It's an ad for two people who are being sold as slaves, a young woman and her infant child. Their lives, Lepore points out, quote, were not ruled by reason and choice. They were ruled by violence and force. When studying history, it's important to consider your sources carefully. Frederick Douglass believed that no white person could fairly or accurately represent the experience of Black people because it wasn't a part of their lives, because they couldn't understand what was true, especially for those who were enslaved, which is why he wrote and spoke so much about his life, a 3-volume autobiography, in fact, among so many other articles and speeches that he gave. And I think it was also part of why he was photographed so often. Such radically different experiences of life and justice and America creates a wall of misunderstanding that is very hard to cross. Douglass knew that. He knew it was true then. And we know it is true now. I wonder what Frederick Douglass would think of Black Lives Matter, the movement that began in 2013 after Trayvon Martin's murderer was acquitted. A year later, 2014, after Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, Missouri, hashtag Black Lives Matter began to show up everywhere. So much so that even white people like me, even white churches like so many in our Unitarian Universalist Association couldn't miss it. That was also when things began to change, at least for me and for many of us. Now there is the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, which operates in the US, in the UK, and Canada. Their mission, quoting, is to eradicate white supremacy and build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by the state and vigilantes. By combating and countering acts of violence, creating space for Black imagination and innovation, and centering Black joy, we are winning immediate improvements in our lives. That's part of their mission statement. I wonder what Frederick Douglass would think about this country, his country, the country of his descendants and of all of us. What would he think about the fact that we so clearly need Black Lives Matter now? So clearly needed that millions of people and houses of worship and schools and towns and theaters and sports teams and universities are hanging a sign on their property and on their website, Black Lives Matter. Not more than any other lives, but as much as the Declaration of Independence promised, as much as the 13th and the 14th Amendments to the Constitution and the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts and so many other laws have promised and too often failed to deliver. What would Frederick Douglass think about our needing this declaration that Black lives matter. Not 76 years after the Declaration of Independence was published, as he was speaking from, but 176 years after the end of the Civil War that ended slavery. 56 years after Bloody Sunday, when racial violence showed up on everybody's television. 7 years after high schooler Michael Brown and middle schooler Tamir Rice were shot and killed by police. 1 year after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and dozens of others were killed by police. And thousands of Black and Indigenous, people of color, disabled, trans, queer people are suffering and sometimes dying, affected in so many different ways from the baked-in racism and oppressions that are so much a part of the normal life in our country that it is way easy for those of us who don't directly experience them to miss all of it. Here we are. What can we do? Here's something new to me that I learned from Jill Lepore's book. Frederick Douglass believed that technology was transformational. In particular, in his case, in his time, he was talking about the technology of photography, but Lepore says it's part of a larger conviction. She writes, Douglass believed both that photography would set his people free by telling the truth about their humanity, and that photography would help realize the promise of democracy by capturing rich and poor alike. Technological progress, he predicted, would usher in an age of equality, justice, and peace. What a thought. Makes you think again about Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all the other social media whose destructive, divisive powers we know all too well. And we also know about their power to bring voices that have been so long kept out of the center into even my world and yours. How they can provide a gateway into stories and facts and truths that we need to know in order to live into our freedom as Americans, as a person. Today, July 4th, 2021, we are rededicating the Black Lives Matter banner again, because it was destroyed and replaced again. There it is, outside the meeting house, being a declaration. And declarations matter, especially when we learn enough to mean them. James Baldwin told us, there is never time in the future in which we will work out our salvation. The challenge is in the moment. The time is always now. So may it be. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with the world until we are together again. The Benediction by James Baldwin. Nothing is fixed forever and forever and forever. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails, lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. Let us resist the tide and stay awake in the light. As Baldwin tells us, we must never forget that we hold one another in love and faith. Never forget that it is our work to believe in a just and beautiful world, to believe it is possible, and to make it so. Amen. Go in peace.